Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Chrism, and I'd like to welcome you to this program about your Kundalini. This is all about your Kundalini and how the Kundalini affects you and how you can live with the Kundalini, and most importantly, how you surrender to the divine force that's awakening within you. Very important to understand that within the Kundalini, some pretty fantastic things can happen. They're all real. Whether or not you are grounded in science or whether or not you're grounded in religion or, any type of spiritual understanding, when the Kundalini comes, it will typically reach far outside of what you're able to metabolize from the mundane standpoint. And so I want you to really begin to at least during this short time on this program, suspend your disbelief. Suspend your disbelief. Suspend the inability of you to metabolize some of this information just because it sits far outside of your conventional belief system or your conventional understandings of life and how life begins to interact on this world. There are still mysteries to be discovered by science. Science has not found all the answers. If they had found all the answers, we'd have flying cars right now. And guess what, folks? My vehicles are all on the ground. They're ground dwellers. If they're flying, they're about 6 inches off the ground. I'm talking about maybe 600 feet off the ground. So science has not found all the answers yet because I'm waiting for those flying cars. Anyway, welcome to the program today. It looks like we have plenty of people calling in. And I'd like to welcome everybody in the chat room, Mary Jean, Vincent, the various guests, Atlanta Seeker. I'd like to welcome everybody who's listening to us, the future people in the archives. Hello, everybody there in the archives. Nice to have you with us in the future. And yes, Mary Jean, that is absolutely right. I'm going to ask you how the sound is. Vincent, Mary Jean, Atlanta Seeker. If you can let me know that I'm not just talking to the air, as sometimes we have problems with the technology, I should say. So if my voice is being heard, Mary Jean, Vincent, Atlanta Seeker, let me know, and then I will. Oh, Mary Jean says perfect. Very good. Thank you, Mary Jean, and thank you, everybody else. Okay, so let us just dive right into this pool. I bring up the whole idea of science not understanding spiritual phenomena or Kundalini-induced phenomena because we are so innocent to the machinations of the energetic consciousness and the spiritual consciousness and how they interact with us. Most, if not all, of our politicians have no clue that those epiphanies that they get and those agreements that they get and those internal validations of what they get over, do we make war over here on this country, or, do we pass this medical bill over here, or, do we pass this banking bill over there? They are being guided through spiritual consciousness. They are being guided to make specific choices in their career. And this is very important for people to understand because we're basically guided by the spiritual consciousness that guides each of these politicians. And, the politicians, there are dark ones and there are light ones. And so this eternal struggle to balance the good with the bad is constantly being waged on many, many levels, not just in the family life. Of course, we know that, we're trying to teach our kids to do the right thing and not to do the wrong thing as our culture deems right and wrong to be. And then at the workplace, we're constantly pushed to compete and to to do better and to do more for less, and that also, isn't going to be left out of this whole understanding that we are controlled by the intuitions that we have and by the spiritual levels of consciousness and creation that supply the answers to our intuitive questions. And these will often be entities, spiritual creation that does not have a body, that wants to have direct influence upon those of us who do have a flesh body and who are currently living within a limited understanding of life and creation and the larger format of how life and creation intersect within the limited conscious human mind. And this, and where does Kundalini fit within all this? Well, Kundalini takes the blinders off of our eyes, off of our inner eyes, and to a large degree off of our exterior eyes. We're able to see spirit. We're able to hear spirit. We're able to understand where our guidance is coming from. And of course, as I've said many times on this program before, you do not accept guidance from spiritual source unless that spiritual source is the Kundalini awakening within you. The Kundalini is the source of the guidance for the folks that I'm speaking to right now. And that goes for people that are within the activation sequence or within the awakening sequence or within the sequence of seeking an activation. You take guidance from your Kundalini. And if your Kundalini gave you to listen to the guidance that my Kundalini is giving you, well, then that's still your Kundalini guiding you to receive a very specific level of information. And as we move into these areas, we begin to see and understand and observe how spiritual consciousness plays an increasingly integrative role within even mundane people. So if you've seen the alcoholic on the street talking to the air, well, if you see that with Kundalini eyes, you can see exactly what he or she is talking to. And so you know that it isn't just the air that this person is talking to. You begin to understand that spiritual consciousness is all around us all the time. If you're an awakening person or you're inside of a mid to late activation and then into an early awakening, you can be totally beleaguered by entities. And I know I've covered this in other programs, but it serves to be repeated. I mean, inside of a pre-activated modality where people are, they're exploring different spiritual options like twin flames or twin hearts or the Akashic records, which, anyway. The various assumptions that the religions, the big religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, the assumptions that the humans that were involved in sculpting how those religions are being received today, they are still quite blind to, even though they may speak of it. I know that Christianity speaks of demons and the devil, and so does Buddhism, and so does Hinduism, and so does Islam, for that matter. They all speak of a level of goodness and badness that is around us all the time, and this is indeed true. Whether or not you're in those religions or following those religions, there is a level of malevolence on one side and joyousness on the other, and it is for us to choose the noble path between those two competing forces. And I'm bringing this up today because I had somebody who was beginning to have the Kundalini call me up yesterday and says, "Oh my God, this man is attacking me, and he's in my head, and I haven't been able to sleep for 72 hours, and oh my God, Master Chrism, what am I going to do? How can you help me?" all the different things that I hear. And of course, I give this person as much help as I can possibly give, and I tell her to do very specific things, and yet, I talked to her this morning, and all of a sudden, he is the path that she must take, and poetry, this and that, and the dreams, this and that, and it's just like, oh boy, why did I even waste my time? But I have to waste my time because I have to give everybody a fair chance at coming into the clarity of their own Kundalini, rather than being stormtrooped, which stormtrooping somebody's brain is forcing themselves into their mind and basically inserting specific levels of dogma in order to pull them into your control or into any kind of a nefarious activity. Nefarious, meaning, something that is dangerous to the individual. Pulling them there by virtue of an ego that has not been receiving any kind of a refinement opportunity. And so this person that is pulling the other person in is basically building a huge level of karmic blockage for them to have to live through life after life after life after life. And this is stormtrooping somebody's mind. And I do not own that term. Brooke Robertson actually coined that term for me. And so many thanks for that, Brooke. So you don't get away with stormtrooping a person's mind. Now, the only force that I know of that gets to stormtroop another person's mind is the Shakti or Shiva Kundalini. The sacred male, Shiva, or the sacred female, Shakti, they have free reign to stormtroop a person's mind, especially with that person's mind is being directed towards Kundalini activation or awakening. And it's very important for people to be able to distinguish between the Shakti, the Shiva, and a discarnate entity. And typically the discarnate entity is going to corrupt a person or try to addict a person or try to in some way insinuate itself into that person's thinking and levels of seniority over their body. A lot of the entities will try to just want to take you over, which is kind of what was happening to this person that I was just talking about. They're being taken over. They're in the process of being taken over, and I'm not allowed to dissolve their choice within that, even though the choice isn't. It's not an even playing field. It's not fair, and the Shakti is regularly not fair. If the person, within the Shakti or Shiva context, if the person wants to go that route, well, then perhaps they'll be allowed to go that route for a certain amount of time, and then if they're lucky, the Kundalini will come to them and say, "Hey, you don't have to live this way. Here, there's another way of doing this," and go over practice the safeties or things of that nature. And it's very important for us to understand that even within the Kundalini context, maybe even especially within the Kundalini context, if you have never seen a discarnate entity before appear in front of your eyes, well, that has the capability of changing your world. That can change the way you perceive life on this world. Hearing it is one thing, and that can also change things up a bit for you, but when you see it in front of you, and you know that nobody else is seeing what you're seeing, that begins a level of an expansion of consciousness. And that consciousness expansion is going to be forced on people with the Kundalini, whether they're seeing things or not. And so if you do start to see an entity, don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's just that the blinders are being taken off. The blindfold, I should say, is being taken off of your eyes. And you're able to see what is truly out there interacting with us, whether we know it or not. And as I said before, the policeman that pulls you over, he is being controlled by entities. The doctor that's doing surgery on your eye or your heart or your, any part of your body, that doctor, that surgeon, that nurse, that medical individual is also being controlled. So you need to understand that it's not just the politicians, it's not just the cops, it's not the doctors, it's all of us. except perhaps those who are within the Kundalini awakening. Because once the Kundalini comes in, unless you're like this other person, she's being dominated by somebody that wants to have sex with her, just for the purpose of having her there at his beck and call, I guess. Aside from that, you just take instruction from your Kundalini, from your sacred male, your sacred female, your Shakti, your Shiva. You take advice strictly from the Kundalini. And that is when the Kundalini begins to guide you towards a flesh teacher, if that's the agenda for you. And unfortunately, there just aren't that many flesh teachers that are authentic and true, that aren't wrapped up in some sort of religious dogma, that aren't being controlled by copious amounts of money, that don't have very specific expectations. These kinds of teachers are not common, although they're out there somewhere. Your Kundalini knows where they are. Your Kundalini knows where they are, but even with the contact with that teacher, you're at the mercy of technology and how your Kundalini interacts with the technology, and often with electronic instruments, the Kundalini is just going to shut those laptops, those computers, those cell phones, those wristwatches, those car computers. I mean, it's going to shut those down, possibly. Not for everyone, but sometimes it does occur. So I have to bring it into the conversation here. And so it's very, very important for people to understand that spiritual consciousness is a constant interaction that we, even inside of limited consciousness, we understand is stormtrooping our brains at sometimes. And they're not asking for permission to come in. They're not asking for permission. They just come on in and say, oh, steal that candy bar, or, oh, step on that bug, or, some sort of a thing that elicits a karmic response for the awakening person to try to work through. So it's very important for people not to fall victim to the erroneous spiritual consciousness directions that they're given on a day-to-day basis. And I think the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other is a very, as I've mentioned before, is a very common theme, and actually has far more truth to it than people might imagine. Because not only are there discarnate forces that are corruptive, but there are also discarnate forces that are positive and pro-spiritual evolution as well. But it depends on where the person is within that. Do we live our lives from copious amounts of fear? Fear of loss. And that, when I say fear of loss, I'm saying fear of losing your money, fear of losing your health, fear of losing your position in life, fear of losing your job, fear of losing your life, fear of losing your animal or your kids or your possessions or whatever it is, fear of loss. And then want of gain. Well, you want more money. You want a more pleasurable lifestyle. You want your hair color to be, what it was when you were 18. You want your health to be what it was when it was 18. You want very, very specific things. And so this is what is covered by the fear of loss and the want of gain. And so if you're living from that equation, fear of loss and want of gain, well, then you're opening yourself up to levels of discarnate activity that will, depending on which is stronger within you, which area that you reflect the most with, that will determine what you call towards yourself on a metaphysical level. And this is why the practice of the safeties is so important. A metaphysical level is basically you're going to be given from the safeties, you're going to be given the ability to express the noble behaviors, to express noble actions and thoughts and characteristics. And this is extremely important for people to understand because as you are given that, you begin to mitigate what it is you're experiencing. You can begin to understand, well, what is this voice in my head? What is this gaseous black pyramid that's forming in front of me? What is this this disembodied eye that is looking at me, this blue eye. What is this? What are these different little sparkly lights mean, and what are they trying to tell me, and all of this stuff? Well, you begin to discern these types of things, and especially within the Kundalini context, you begin to do this, unless you're so wrapped up in having your reality sculpted the way you've always known it to be. Well, then you're going to kind of get in the way of yourself, and even though the Shakti will override your expectation, the reception of that overriding can be very traumatic for people. And it can open them up to levels of fear, and fear, like anger, fear and anger are very low vibrations. And so they begin to attract those things that resonate with lower vibrations of fear and anger. And so you can begin to see how your mindset and how you feel about life really begins to attract that which you're going to interact with in a very, very short amount of time, regardless of whether the Kundalini is active or awakened within you or not. You don't have to be Kundalini awakened or activated to attract very specific levels of spiritual interaction to your brain, to your mind, to your heart, and how you feel about other people and how you feel about things in general. You don't have to be, Kundalini active or awakened to have that. Everybody gets to have that. And this is how we are given to guide ourselves through the life. And as we have politicians that are being darkly possessed, which, that's happening quite a bit, as we have politicians and sports figures and television entertainers and, movie stars, as they begin to express very, very dark qualities, well, those qualities in turn, will reach out to those people who respond to the level of dark quality that person is putting out. And so, if you go to, like, say, a scary movie of The Exorcist or something of that nature, you see a lot of metaphysical violence being perpetrated on a helpless young girl, and you like that. Well, then, boom, you're beginning to attract that to yourself. Because of our levels of denial in the Western societies, and I mean Western Europe, I mean United States, I mean South America, Australia, certain parts of Asia, certainly India and other parts of Western Asia. There's a great level of fear and repression over sexuality and how sexuality is being expressed and what the different taboos are around sexuality. And I know that, certainly within the Western technological environments, and I'm going to include India with this and Asia as well, there are levels of perversion that are tied to things like pornography or BDSM or things of that nature. BDSM stands for bondage. I always get the D. The D always misses me. Let's see. Bondage, something with a D, sadomasochism. Bondage, something with a D, sadomasochism. And this, this is kind of a short-circuiting of the natural sexual attraction that people can have and hold. Domination, Atlanta Seeker say. Thank you, Atlanta Seeker. Bondage, domination, sadomasochism, and this bondage, of course, is restraining a person. Domination, of course, is dominating a person. Sadomasochism is a form of encouraging self-hurt to occur on a physical or sexual level. And within these levels of BDSM and pornography, many, many, many people, both male and female, are being guided towards that expression. And as they welcome that expression and they give their orgasm, by virtue of that kind of stimulation, they begin to really draw to themselves in a very, very strong way some of the extremely negative entities and spiritual forces that will begin to try to subvert that person's life expression towards more of that level of corruption, the corruption of the first and second chakra, the corruption of the sexual response and our society's expectation around the sexual response. And if you look in the United States and Western Europe, there's a strong level of pornography that is, in some cases it's legal, in some cases it's illegal, but it runs the gamut from adults to children to animals to self-stimulation, any and many varied levels of repression are inserted into the sexual expressive experience. And this is really important for Kundalini people to begin to understand, because as the filters are being thinned, i.e. the veil is being thinned, and you're able to receive more and more interaction with spiritual forces, spiritual guidance, and spiritual entities in general, many of these entities are going to start pushing you towards levels of sexual expression that can be very detrimental to your health. And the person I brought up last, this person that's being dominated by another person, is a great example of that. All of a sudden you begin to legitimize how inside your own head, you're being helped by that inside conversation with external entities that if you don't know about entities, well, you don't know that it's an external anything. You think it's your own thought. And so you begin to get guided without your knowledge. You get to be stormtrooped towards some sort of a hurtful, either karmically hurtful or physically hurtful, most of the time emotionally hurtful sexual interaction that diminishes yourself in some way, or in many varied ways begins to work at a level of corruption for you to have to get through either later on in life or in the next life. You want to really separate this, though, from some of the things that the Shakti will have you do within a sexual context, with self-stimulation, saying a mantra, using self-stimulation to put a real punch into that mantra and to allow that mantra to have its desired effect upon the individual. Well, this isn't guided by a discarnate entity that has nefarious values. This is guided by the Shakti Kundalini, the Shiva Kundalini. This is guided by that interior divine force. And the interior divine force will also cover areas of sexual expression. Okay? Some of the things that it will cover are levels of being both male and female at the same time. Not physically so much, but certainly mentally, emotionally. You lose the gender identification for a certain amount of time. That can come back, or it can stay lost. It depends on what the Kundalini in the individual is really looking forward within that expression for the individual. So that's one thing that you can express. You can also expect certain levels of extremely high libido. I mean, your libido will go through the roof, and many of the sexual functions will take on an automatic quality, like the genital fluidic ascension. GFA becomes a very automatic function. And GFA, you can't initiate GFA anyway. GFA is a combination of the Kundalini pulling sacred fluids up into the spinal cord, or up into its own presence within the spinal cord, within the Chitrini channel, by virtue of using specific body organs as reverse pumps. The prostate is a reverse pump. Some of the womb can also be a reverse pump, and many of the different sub organs of the sexual organism as a whole. Many of these individual organs that are part of that system have dual and many times triple and quadruple purposes that science, medical science, which likes to call itself an art when it doesn't know what's happening, medical science and artists, they don't know about this yet. They don't know about this yet because it wasn't taught to them at Harvard Medical School or wherever they went to learn about the workings of the body. Not to say that they're completely erroneous, though. Well, they're not. The ERs, the emergency rooms here in the States are really great, and I imagine they are in some of the other developed Western countries as well. But as far as their understandings of a more complete understanding of the human system, well, they're lagging quite a bit behind Kundalini awakened people. So as you have your Kundalini, you have your libido extremely stimulated by the Kundalini, well, then what are you supposed to do with it? Oh, my gosh. If you're a Hindu person, well, then you're going to have to practice brahmacharya. You have to practice celibacy. You're going to have to practice, many different formats of self-denial. And in other areas, if you're a shaman or if you're, somebody else who is just being guided by their Kundalini, well, the Kundalini will have you have orgasm after orgasm after orgasm after orgasm, male or female. And if you're a man and that means you're spilling the seed all over the place, well, you have to go with that flow, so to speak. But you don't have to go with that flow in the form of a pornographic stimulation or stimulation that is corrupted, that is cruel, that is hurtful to other humans or animals. You don't do that, and you don't even visit the jokes that you get from various people about the sexual expression. You have to try to keep things as pure as possible. If you're given a mantra from your Kundalini or from your teacher, and that mantra, you're supposed to be saying it during a sexual function, well, then you do that during that sexual function, and you let the power of the sexual function, you let the power of the Kundalini within that sexual function begin to insinuate itself into the mantra, and you also begin to materialize that mantra in a much better way. This is, of course, within the context of Kundalini. This is not within the context of pornography. You shouldn't need to be watching pornography in any way, shape, or form, or hearing of it, or lusting after it. If you're lusting after a certain level of pornography, well, you've already got an embedded entity that is beginning to control you towards falling off the cliff of that particular corruption. And so you want to be very careful with how you're guided and what your sexual appetites are. Make sure your sexual appetites don't include animals or children. Absolutely not, in any way, shape, or form. If you are being attracted to an animal or a child in a sexual way, that means that you've got a very dark, corruptive force of an entity within you, and that needs to be dealt with first. And you might ask, well, Master Chrism, how do I deal with that? Well, you by reversing that, by having absolutely no interest whatsoever. I prefer that you become celibate for the rest of your life, rather than do those sexual things to animals or kids. Literally, never, ever, ever have sex again if this is where you're being guided, and really begin to look at why you're being guided this way, and look at what is going on with discarnate infection if you're being guided to go that way. And this includes raping people as well. This includes having the yearning to want to dominate or rape a person, male or female, in order to not so much have sex with them, but to take away their innocence, or take away their love of life, or their joie de vivre, their joy of life. Typically, it's more about power and control than it is about sexual fulfillment. And so you need to look at that as well. And this is very, very, very different from the Kundalini that might say, okay, Master Chrism, I need you to be I need you to submit yourself to complete and total surrender to the Kundalini, myself within you, and to this flesh teacher over here. And you will do anything that they tell you to do, and you will not complain, and you will not abrogate this agreement. And so, boom, once again, there you are. You're being controlled by the Kundalini. You're not being controlled by anybody else except through the Kundalini. If that flesh teacher that you have is asking you to do things that go against the moral guidelines of your culture, well, then I want you to trust the Kundalini. The Kundalini knows what culture you're in, and it knows the moral guidelines of the culture that you're in. And if it's asking you to follow the guidance of this individual, and that individual is having you do things that would go against the sexual taboos of whatever particular culture you're in, well, then I think the Kundalini has a greater level of understanding about you and your purpose and your karma than you do as a newly awakening individual. And so you follow that advice. It is good advice for you. Okay. Oh, I see. Thank you, Amelia, for that note. So, if you have any questions of a sexual nature, Kundalini and the sexual expression, I want you to feel free to call in this number, 347. It's a New York area code, and then its prefix is 934-0026. 347-934-0026. And of course, there's some people here on the on the chat room, and you guys can ask your questions too. I'll be looking it in. Although I have to say, my eyes have been closed a lot of the time during this. So Santara, I'm going to put you on board now. I'd like everybody to know that this is Amelia Santara. She's a very, very helpful moderator for many of the Kundalini groups, and I really appreciate her hosting this show and providing this format for people to learn from. And how are you, Amelia?
I'm very good, Chrism. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's always good to be here.
Oh, good. It's good to have you here as well. Now, I would like you to monitor the chat room if you would, because I'm streaming with my eyes closed right now. Okay. So
yes,
you feel
I
free
have
to.
been doing.
Yeah, you feel free to pop in. Okay. No worries.
Okay. Will do. I just want you to know Manisha is there.
Hi, Manisha.
In the studio.
Oh, she is.
Will we bring her on?
Oh, I see her. 111, guys. No. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Sure. We'll bring her on. Here you go. Hello, Manisha.
Hello, Chrism. You can you hear me?
I can hear you clear as a bell.
Oh, hello.
Hi. Do you have announcements that you would like to make, my dear?
Yes. I'm so happy to tell you all that the group in Berlin will be happening the 3rd and the 4th of September with Chrism, and yes, everything is falling into place, and it would just be great. So you can still come and join us in this school of saints that once Chrism called the people who are into safety.
It is indeed a school for saints. That's for sure. That's for sure. And just so you know, everybody, she's talking about a seminar. There's a weekend seminar going on in Berlin on the 3rd and 4th of September, and I have indeed purchased airline tickets and will be there. So if there's anybody that would like to come, I strongly encourage you to come. And you can get a hold of Manisha. Manisha, how do they get a hold of you?
They contact me on Facebook, Manisha Manish. You will find me. And otherwise, I can just give you my email address.
Please? Can you spell that? Manisha Manish?
Yes.
How do you spell that?
MANEESH. And then MANEESH. And my email is MANEESH as a this funny internet mail thingy, the sign. I don't know what it's called in English. And then POSTEO.DE for Germany. So
okay, so we're talking about
me.
Manisha. That would be MANEESHA.
Yes.
At what is the at? POST. P is in Paul, O is in Oscar, S is in Sam, T is in Tom.
Yeah. E like Eric and O like okay. Dot DE. D for daily and E for Eric. Yes?
Yeah. Or, ladies and gentlemen, you can contact me at KFIREFORALL@yahoo.com. That's K, F as in Frank, I as in Ira, R as in Robert, E as in Eric, F as in Frank, O as in Oscar, R as in Robert, A as in Apple, L as in love, L as in love, at yahoo.com. KFireForAll@yahoo.com. None of us seem to have really easy emails, I've noticed.
Oh, do come. It's so lovely to be in the presence of Chrism. I met him last year in London, and it was unforgettable. So I'm so looking forward to seeing you.
I think that was my deodorant there. It was, or lack thereof.
And Manisha is organizing the seminar. She was so taken with the opportunity, weren't you, Manisha, to be with Chrism, to listen to his teachings, that she wanted to do it in Berlin, which is a testament, I think, Manisha, for what the meeting was for you and learning so much about Kundalini. Isn't that true?
Yes, just to be in the presence also of the energy field of Chrism, it's amazing. So come to Berlin.
And I encourage everybody to come to Berlin as well. I think it would be a very, very beautiful opportunity for Europeans and Asians to come and participate in this type of an information and education. I want to thank you very much, Manisha, for organizing this and for putting it on.
My pleasure. Thank you, too.
Oh, you're very welcome. Putting you in the blue, so keep listening, okay, Manisha?
Yes, I will.
Okay, and then Vincent91, he asks, if we are talking about entities, I have this question: how are discarnate entities able to control the physical body, even if the human is not agreeing or is resisting? I'm just going to add the "is" there, resisting their mental and emotional intrusion. Some part of the individual will be in agreement with it. Some part of the individual will have initiated contact with it, or spoken to it in some way, or in some way, shape, or form. Permission was given for that entity to do those things, and that person just needs to begin to resist the compulsion that entity will put into them to do some of the physical things. They can tie right into the spine, Vincent. And so if they can tie into the spine, and they've been given permission to tie into the spine, well, then they can control some of the body movements as well. And that's important for a person to consider. Don't allow entities in if they're promising sexual gratification, because once you do that, they are in, and they can do anything they want with you at that point. And typically, that's not going to be a pretty picture for anybody, even a sadomasochist. Okay? So it's very, very important for people not and I run into this so much. Oh my God, just, people are so wrapped up into this new age baloney that is telling them to become a channeler or to just follow your bliss and let the spirit take you, and instead of being discerning and understanding and learning how to discern and understand, they're just being blindly guided to fall into the arms of some sort of an entity that may not have their best interests at heart, especially from a sexual standpoint. Now, I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, I did not choose this topic. I had no idea what I was going to talk about today, which is typical for me in these programs. And this is an area that Shakti wants us to talk about right now. So I apologize if this subject is uncomfortable for anybody or, is offensive. I don't mean to be offensive in any way, shape, or form. I know this is a fragile subject for many people. I was going to say touchy, but I decided against it. So yeah, I know it's a fragile conversation for people because these are areas that we're not used to talking about at all. Certainly not within a Kundalini context. Karma can also serve to weaken the barriers that we might naturally have towards the entity infestation. So if your karma is, certainly within a Kundalini awakening aspect where a lot of karma is being burned, a lot of karma is being balanced, you're meeting a lot of karma from different lifetime existences, and you're meeting it right now in this lifetime, and that summation may include that you're going to have to deal with discarnate entities. And just to give you an example, in my own case, I've been seeing entities my entire life, since I was a child, since I was an infant, and given the ability to remember them. So my karma definitely called for me to be able to see these entities. And of course, as a child, I was terrified of them because they were quite often they were malevolent, and they didn't seem they seemed out to terrify, to scare, to frighten, to hurt. But I also saw good ones too, and I was also helped by good ones as well. But the scenario is your karma can also allow a certain level of entity-based sexual interaction to occur. In many cases, we don't get, people have this logical, linear ideology of karma, saying this, okay, well, you get to work off all the karma from the last life, and they think that it just goes from life to life to life to life. Well, it doesn't work that way. Some levels of karma will be given from the previous life. Other levels of karma will be given from other lives previous to that previous life, and so on and so forth. It's not all just one life, and then you live this life and you get to live that karma. Then the next life you live, you get to live the karma you're making today. No, it's cherry picked in a way. It's picked very specifically for the person that's going towards a spiritual maturity, the maturation process being exemplified by beginning to have the Kundalini activation take place. And this karma, can be organized by grace, by the Kundalini within you, so that when you have reached a certain age and you have reached a certain level of Kundalini activation, well, boom, then you get to deal with some of these karmic effects, which may include having entities come to you and begin to try to assert control over you, as Vincent is suggesting. And Vincent continues to ask, he says, and may I ask, when those very hurtful and damaging movements will stop? Well, Vincent, may I ask you how much longer you're going to allow it to occur? How much longer? Give me a time frame here. 5 minutes, 5 years, five decades. How much longer are you going to allow this to occur before you tie your hands to your belt so that the entity isn't allowed to use your hands? I already know that they're not affecting you that way at work, so the Shakti is protecting your work. But when are you going to start taking more proactive movements? And this brings up a very, very strong point. Sometimes if your karma allows the entity to insinuate itself within you, and you in some way, through your innocence and your ignorance, have allowed that entity to grow in its power over you, well, then you're going to have to start resisting that pretty hard, pretty diligently and pretty hard. You're going to have to do that reversal over and over and over. People think, oh, Chrism told me to do the reversal, so I did it once, and it didn't work. I want you to do it 1,000 times. I want you to do the reversals every single time any kind of entity interaction is pushed upon you that is detrimental or corruptive to your process. Okay. Are we clear about that? Now, Vincent's writing some more, and so, and that's fine, and I'll answer any of his questions. But for those of you that are not having entity experiences right now, it's not a guarantee that you're going to see the entity. That happens to about 60% of the people, 60 to 65%. Those people that are within that 65% don't have to worry about it. They may hear them. You may hear them. You may feel them in some way. Excuse me a moment. Oh, my gosh. I usually get 2 in a row. So just a second here. I see Vincent still typing, so we'll definitely go into that. Okay. All right. The second one's probably going to just show up on its own. So it's very important for people, especially people in the New Age community, not to invite entities into their bodies or their consciousness or their life in any way, shape, or form. This is why I never, ever, ever suggest Reiki therapies in any way, shape, or form, because these people are as blind as a bat, and yet they're they don't even have the sonar that a bat has. They're just sticking their hands out into the etheric and saying, "Oh, spiritual forces of the universe, plug into my hands that I can give this person the healing." Of course, receive lots of money for it, and of course, receive a lot of self-aggrandizement for it. So please plug on in. And who do you think they're going to attract? Well, it's going to be some sort of a discarnate force that's going to plug itself into their hands and then travel right into that sick person. No, thank you. No, thank you. Nah. Vincent continues. He says, I'm doing that. And I think he's referring to the reversals. He says, I'm doing that. I am holding my arms behind my back when any kind of those attacks occur. But it's already occurring for very long. For instance, I am being pushed to walk a different direction. I resist that. Keep resisting it, Vincent. Keep resisting it, because I'll tell you what, your karma is agreement. She wants you to have this. She wants you to have this experience. That means the sacred Kundalini, the sacred Shakti, sacred Mother, sacred Feminine, wants you to have this, and therefore you're going to have it. But you can keep doing what I'm suggesting. And he says, that's taking away my hope. The force doesn't appear to get much weaker over time. Vincent, how long? What expectations of a timeline do you have? How long should it take, do you think? In your ignorance about this whole process and what is occurring, how can you even suggest that a timeline that is acceptable to you even exists? We make such assumptions, It's just like, well, gosh, I have to go to work. I mean, I'm almost late for work. I got to go out there and I got to catch that train, and then and it's just like, well, if I'm doing a reversal, Chrism, it should be all over now. No. It is not over in 1 year. And no, I see what you've written there, Vincent. You said I'm resisting for over a year constantly. No, you're not. I know for a fact that you're not. Okay. You've had periods of time where you've been resisting, but we've also had conversations where you weren't resisting. Okay. And so you haven't been consistently resisting for over a year, but I suggest that you continuously resist for over 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. It's going to depend on your karma too, Vincent. And it's going to depend on your levels of expectation and why would the Shakti pull away from you when you definitely have some good education positioning itself within you right now. And you're obviously doing well. You're resisting it. You're resisting the damage that it wants to incur upon you. Keep that going. This is a very positive thing that I'm seeing occurring with you. And you're because it's difficult, you're tired of it and you want it to just go away. Well, I want you to just be diligent with it. I want you to be disciplined and diligent and continue to resist. And that goes with any of you that would have some sort of a dysfunctional, negative, hurtful entity within you. You never do. And oh, here's the other thing. People go, well, I just want to release it with love. I just want to give it love, and that will do it. You know, it's like a Barbie doll thinking. You know, Ken and Barbie dolls. It's like, oh, well, if we just release it with love. Well, what makes you think that entity is not going to eat that love and ask for more inside of the detrimental activity that it's having upon you? Why do you think love, in your limited understanding of what love actually is, why do you think that love is the answer to that? Don't love the entity. Love God. Love grace. Love Kundalini. Love yourself for being able to withstand an entity like you've been doing for almost a year, Vincent. Give yourself some credit for having strength, for having discernment, for having good guidance, for receiving that guidance, for implementing that guidance. Give yourself some credit. And Vincent writes again, he says, so you are suggesting it will go away when the Shakti decides it to be. What I'm suggesting is that it will go away when you demonstrate to the Shakti that it's time for it to go away and you fulfill a karmic commitment. And so, in other words, your personality, your ego mind doesn't get to take charge and say, okay, we're done with this now. What you do have the opportunity to do is to resist what that entity is trying to compel you to do. That is where you get to say, so it wanted me to step out in front of that bus. Well, then I'm going to take a taxi, or I'm going to take a train, or I'm going to do something that perhaps I can't step out in front of. Maybe I'll just walk to work. You see what I'm saying? And so you do something that's very much different than what that corrupt entity is trying to have you do. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, Vincent. And anybody else that has an embedded entity that's causing them to self-aggrandize themselves or change, their emotional conditioning or physical conditioning to bring more attention to themselves or to in some way besmirch the natural development that people that all people go into, in some way, bringing in some sort of an egotistical value that doesn't really have a place inside of the Kundalini except as a level of corruption, an invitation into self-aggrandizement or self-debauchery or self-pain or there's a lot of different things that we can suggest into ourselves that are not helpful. And they're typically given by the ego or an entity that is stimulating the ego to do a certain thing. And that means that they can also, the entities often will do this. So they'll go, well, let's just say, oh, Chrism, this is an entity talking to Chrism right now. Chrism, I want you to jump off of that cliff. Go now. It's okay. You'll land on a tree. No harm come to you. Well, of course I'm not going to do that. But the entity can go further and say, wow, Chrism, this is your Kundalini speaking. You will do as I say. Jump off the cliff and the tree will catch you. Go ahead. Do it now. I'm watching. I command you. And so it will disguise itself as the Kundalini, or try to disguise itself as the Kundalini, in order to get you to do what in many cases your ego already wants you to do, or in many cases is going to cause you severe physical hardship, so that you don't get to mature, or at least you don't mature as rapidly into grace as you otherwise would have if you hadn't taken corrupt advice. So that's why you practice the noble behaviors. You don't bring undue attention upon yourself. You don't try to corrupt yourself in some way by not practicing the noble behaviors, such, and the noble behaviors are repeated throughout many of the big religious systems. I know with Christianity, forgiveness is a noble behavior, or what is the one when people try to beautify themselves? What is that? What is that? Santara, what's the one where people like to beautify themselves or make themselves prettier?
What is in the Christian?
Yeah,
what's
the Christian
your question?
context. One of the seven. What, you weren't paying attention?
I'm not understanding you. I'm thinking of the Beatitudes, but
no. These are seven deadly sins.
Oh,
seven deadly
vanity.
Sins. Vanity. Thank you, my dear. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So vanity. People are always so engrossed about how they look. The people that are, if you're young, well, you put makeup on to look older, and if you're older, you put makeup on to look younger. I mean, it's just pathetic. Accept yourself the way you are. Don't try to self-aggrandize yourself by using, chemicals to try to insinuate a look that you don't really own anymore. Not to mention that some of these makeups and dyes and whatnot, they're tested on animals in a very cruel way. Is that what you want to wear on your face or your head? Seriously, folks, this does have an impact on your Kundalini. I'm not against makeup, or sometimes there's a purpose with that the Kundalini will have a person put on makeup, typically not hair coloring, but I guess anything's possible. But yeah, look at levels of self-aggrandizement and how that is beginning to control your life. Once again, you may see an entity behind that. Okay. You might hear some sirens. Sounds like they're coming my way here. It's probably because I spoke about sex on the internet that they're going to come get me and haul me away now. So it's been good to know you in case they come and get me. So back to the sex and the Kundalini. As that libido is really, really, really strong, you're going to have periods of insatiable appetite. Picking my words very carefully here. Insatiable appetite, and I'm going to suggest that the Kundalini will either tell you not to partake of that appetite or to partake of it copiously. And a lot of that's going to depend on where your mindset is and in what way that expression is taking form. If it's taking form where it's causing other people hurt and harm, then you do not do that. If it's taking form where it is a mutual expression of unity and coming together, well, then that's a good plan. You partake of that as much as you can. If you're working in any of the tantric levels, then of course, within your tantric teachings, you know what to do. And if you're doing Maithuna or Yab Yam or any of those types of positioning, make sure that you follow the instructions, that you don't give in to your own carnal desires of. Make sure you keep it disciplined and keep it working for you in that way. Don't give in to the very strong temptation to purposefully inflict the orgasm or, whatever it may be. Because I don't know what kind of Tantra teaching everybody listening to the show is going to have. I know that when I'm teaching Tantra, the Shakti dances upon the Shiva platform. And the Shiva platform holds very still, whereas the Shakti platform is very, very, very moving. That's just one of the teachings. And so within the sexual context in the Kundalini, it's very important to remember that this can also attract some entity-type sexual feeders that are typically called, the name, I always forget these guys too, the incubi and the succubi. And you can trace incubi, succubi, these are ancient Latin terms for basic sexual feeders. These are entities that are all about stimulating a sexual response and then feeding off of the life force, the energetic life force that sexual response provides for them. A lot of sailors do this when they're on the high seas and, there's no other outlet. And, these sexual feeders will come to them and participate in a sexual malignancy with these sailors. And this not just Navy sailors, but also merchant marine, people, anywhere, where you're in a kind of a tight space, secluded, no sexual outlet, boom, those sexual feeders will come. Or if you have Kundalini, and if you have Kundalini, well, then that's a big red flag because they really want to partake of that energy. And so they'll come to you and they'll begin to stimulate you. And it's going to be, at first it'll be difficult for you to distinguish that between the Shakti stimulating you and this other putrid force stimulating you. But pretty soon, if you get to see them, you'll never forget them. They're about as ugly as it gets. Terrifying in many ways. And but if you don't get to see them, well, what will happen is your libido will increase itself automatically, even outside of Kundalini context. And when the libido is on an automatic load like that, the Kundalini is not doing it, that a sexual feeder is attacking you right now and trying to get to your life force. And men, certainly with the men, the erection will be spontaneous, but there will also be a visitation down the urethra, and you need to understand that as well. And that visitation down the urethra will also have an effect with women as well, just so you know. So if you have any questions about this, let me know. I'm going to go scroll up here. It looks like Atlantis Seeker is asking a question, and he asked, Chrism, so you don't think brahmacharya or celibacy facilitates the reversing of the energy you mentioned? I guess you're talking about GFA, the reverse of the flow. Celibacy would actually facilitate the GFA, because if you're not practicing celibacy, then you're losing fluids, both male and female. And if you are practicing celibacy, you're keeping those fluids. And if you're keeping those fluids, then the reverse pumping from the prostate and the other glands for both men and women will have something to pump. So let's see. And do you think for some people at least it will help their K-awakening process? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I don't think the Kundalini is determined by celibacy. Absolutely not, actually. No. Now, for some people, okay, like 2 out of a million. So that means that some people will get help. Celibacy doesn't facilitate Kundalini awakening. It doesn't. It might help them inside of their process. So we're already looking at a very small percentage of the population within this process, and then that small percentage within the Kundalini population as well. Kundalini doesn't require a person to do certain things that it can do itself. If the karma is there, so let's just say if they have a karma being extremely profligate in their sexual expression, well, then this life they may be going for the reverse, and that would be celibacy, and that level of celibacy could indeed help a person with their Kundalini awakening expression. But no, celibacy within a Kundalini context is not a guarantee. It's mostly a guarantee for those who do not have the Kundalini. And there, that whole ideology from Catholic priests and nuns to Hindu priests and nuns, it's just like, and then we're even into Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and all this stuff. They're promoting it in many cases without practicing it. They're promoting it without practicing it, and they're making big promises about celibacy that gives you this. Oh, it gives you great strength, and it improves your immune system. And oh my God, it's just the best thing since sliced bread. And it's not. It's not. You're allowed to sexually express during the Kundalini. The Kundalini will actually initiate that expression, even against your will. And the will of the human is nothing against the will of the divine that wants to express a certain quality through that human being. It's going to get expressed. And then GFA stands for genital fluidic ascendance, i.e., the fluids from the reproductive organs or the genital organs are reversed back into the spine. And that is a place where celibacy can be very helpful. Or not celibacy, just not losing the fluids, which is not as easy as a person might think. Cole is asking, keep working and trust Vincent. Oh, he's talking to Vincent, so I'll just go ahead and skip that. And so, yeah, within the sexual context, there is no brahmacharya or celibacy is not a guarantee of any way, shape, or form that a Kundalini awakening is going to be initiated or an activation is going to be initiated. It can help. It can help with the GFA, so it can definitely help in other areas. But those areas need to be pretty much designed by the Kundalini herself. She will give you the inspiration not to have sex or to have copious amounts of sex. But you've got to be able to discern Kundalini from an entity. And until you can do that, it's going to be kind of a game of chance until you begin to really, truly recognize the Kundalini grace within you, as opposed to a discarnate entity posing as Kundalini or giving you corrupt information. I suppose that's as clear as mud. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, all right. Oh, let me come on over here, and I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Dalton Gonzalez to the program. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, Chrism. Thank you.
And how are you today?
Not real good.
Oh no, why is that?
Well, I've had some extreme levels of teachings this week in fear and extreme surrender, and so just to cut the story short, one of the 3 teachings that I received within that was I fell on a 10K trail race yesterday, and just hit really hard and cracked 2 ribs, and my left shoulder is out. So I'm in pain.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Oh, thank you.
Put yourself on that Facebook healing group, will you?
I will. I haven't.
What's the other detrimental thing?
Well, and this all happened. I don't know if you remember, but last week I had talked to you because I was having these lovely healing spinal sweeps that were slow and just really tactily, just really intense, but very felt really good and everything, and I had Skyped with you, and you had said, there might be something coming that this is getting you ready for. We thought maybe it was something to do with my work, which that was one of the tests that I was asked to, come out of my comfort zone for that. But the first thing that happened right after we talked about that was I was on a trail run in the mountains with my husband. We got separated. I was having such a great run that I wasn't paying attention. I got lost in the Olympics. I lost signal at one point. I had no idea where I was going. And so I just kind of, in a real fear test, I wasn't afraid, but it was testing definitely my fear levels, my trust levels, my surrender. At one point, I was just fully surrendered and ready to spend the night. And, I was looking for a place to sleep and figured, I would just be spending the night and maybe, able to be helicoptered out the next day or whatnot, And then as soon as I fully surrendered to it, and I was just in the woods somewhere, God knows where, it didn't matter which way I went, I had lost all electronic signal, so I had no idea where I was going. All of a sudden, for 2 seconds, the signal came back, and I was able to get a ping to my husband, and he saw that I was lost, and so it took him a couple hours to get to me, but he was able to run in, and then we yelled to each other, and were able to find each other. And long story short, then he found me, and we hiked out. Took us another couple hours to hike out, and we got home. So that was test number one.
Did you have a great reunion when you guys finally found each other?
Oh, well, we were just laughing because we had to scream to each other for so long because it was bouncing off of the different rocks and things, and so we kept both of us running around, trying. And I had gotten lost on a part of a trail that he's never been able to even get to, so he was completely unaware that this trail even existed.
Stand by a second, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Is everybody still hearing this in the chat room? Go ahead and write if you can hear it. Cole, Mary Jean, go ahead and write if you're hearing this, please. We just had a server malfunction, and so because you're calling in on a phone.
Yeah.
Is everybody there in the chat room able to hear? Anybody respond in the chat room, please? We just had a server thing going on. I'm not sure they're hearing us. Oh, it looks like they are. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Well,
it
I
wouldn't surprise me if they're not.
I understand that you had some challenges, and so how are you meeting these challenges, Elizabeth?
I'm just fully surrendering and not going to a place of fear, and it's really changed me. I don't know. I feel such a different level of surrender and such a different level of, and the second one, like I said, was I fell harder than I've ever fallen in my life down a hill yesterday. And I landed on my diaphragm, which is weird because that is so strong in me because I play flute and everything. So that's something that's built up. So it's kind of, I literally bounced off my diaphragm on my stomach like a trampoline. And I did crack 2 ribs and stuff, but I'm really, other than that, not really hurt. And I never went into a place of fear, which is weird because I used to typically be a hypochondriac. And I just didn't even go there. I wasn't even going to get x-rays, and I never did, actually. I just went and had my ribs taped and stuff. But I went down so hard I didn't really have time to be afraid as I was falling. But I wasn't, after I fell, I laid there for a while because I was so dizzy and I couldn't get up. And was pretty sure I dislocated my shoulder, I don't know, until I got to the hospital. But I literally got up and finished the run. I ran back. which is, you know, I just wasn't afraid, and I wasn't going to a place of, you know, I was in extreme pain, but I just was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to run back and, you know, and deal with it when I get back, you know. I didn't go to a place of fear, which is really weird for me. And then the third test, which took me completely out of my comfort zone, again, it was just a complete surrender. Something happened at work. I talked to you about it. You said, especially because of the stuff that had been going on with the tactile stuff, that I may be asked to do something out of my comfort zone. And so in the night last night, before I knew I was going to go in this morning, I just completely surrendered. I just said, what am I going to need to do? And I went through it, and I was fully ready to go in and defend myself and stand up for myself, which I never do. And I did, and it had a really positive outcome, and it didn't turn out how I thought it would, and I didn't end up having to leave there. It was like, in fact, quite the opposite, where everything turned around and my boss came back to me saying, I'll do anything. What can I do to keep you here? What can I do to make you happy? What can I change? I mean, it was just amazing that once I surrendered and I didn't give in to the fear or anger or anything, and I merely just stated what I needed to state and what I needed to say, it completely turned around, and I'm still blown away by the outcome of her response and how she rallied behind me, and I still can't even quite believe it happened, but she just said, I'll do anything to make it better.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's that. And that was 3, so I'm hoping that's it for the week.
I'm going to put you on hold here just for a second, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Get another perspective here. And here we have Brooke is online. Hi, Brooke. Hello. Is Brooke available? Okay, doesn't sound like that. Okay, so going back into the blue with that, and then I'm going to come back to Elizabeth here. Elizabeth, do you have any questions at all?
No. You mean pertaining to the subject you were talking about through the show?
No.
Oh.
Questions from the groups.
Oh, those. Yes, I have a ton of questions. Sorry, I forgot about those. Hang on. Let me I have to get them off my computer. Let's hope my computer works. Okay, so let's see. Okay, the first one, she said I didn't have to read these in order, but the first one kind of pertains, part of it anyway, to what you're talking about today. The person says, how can I discern if what I'm experiencing is Kundalini? Sometimes I'm afraid to surrender in case it is an entity that has taken control of my body and causes me to move and jerk.
Yeah. Basically, by practicing the noble behaviors, you force anything that's riding along with you in your body to practice those noble behaviors too. So as long as you're practicing the noble behaviors, thinking noble thoughts, things like forgiveness, kindness, consideration, tolerance, patience, trust, love, happiness, joy, focus on positivity in as much a way as you can, which is not the easiest thing in the Western society. But as you focus on these positive expressions, you don't need to worry that you're not covering the negative. The negative will take care of itself. Matter of fact, there's quite a bit of negativity on this world right now. And so don't worry that there isn't enough negativity to go around. And it also doesn't take you away from dealing with your own shadow selves either. Matter of fact, what you are doing by doing self-correction that way is dealing with the shadow parts of you and changing them into a format that allows more of a flow and an understanding with the Kundalini, as it comes up within the individual. So you practice the noble behaviors, and those noble behaviors will let you know through discernment what is actually occurring with you. It may not happen just after one time. You can't go, okay, I said thank you, and I opened a door for somebody, so okay, I did the noble behaviors now, okay, what's going on? You can't do that. You've got to do it over and over and over and over. It's got to become a new lifestyle for you. That's the important thing. Sometimes we get the idea, it's like, well, okay, I smiled at that person as I went by. Okay, I'm waiting for my reward. I'm waiting for my payoff, my payback. Master Chrism, when's it going to stop? Okay, you got to do a lot more. And if it takes years, it takes years. But you've got to do it, and you've got to do it consistently, over and over and over and over, until it becomes second nature to you. And let me tell you something. If the noble qualities become second nature to you, you're only going to really attract positive levels unless there's a karmic override. If there's a karmic override from a previous existence, well, then and if it happens to be negative, well, then there will be a negativity there. But even so, the noble qualities have a way of helping an individual that may have a negative karmic override. Over. Next question.
So the next one also goes along with the show. They say, hello, I feel an increase in sexual feelings after meditation. How to control? Yes, I try, but I fail.
Tried to what?
I guess they try to control the sexual feelings, but they fail.
Well, forgive yourself and keep trying. Over.
Okay. Now, this is a really long question and kind of hard to understand, but what they say is, what's the part of us that can move between heaven and earth, the manifest and unmanifest, between the subtle and gross? Is it the mind? I think not, because that part of me goes into the mind and also sometimes out and beyond the mind. Is it like essence fire? I feel it may be some aspect of the heart. I ask because it seems my physical body sits here in the manifest and my consciousness in the unmanifest, and my other, like astral, etheric, mental, emotional bodies sit in their place between the two in mixtures of more than one or the other, some more subtle, some less manifest. So which body or aspect can go around from one to the other?
Consciousness can. Consciousness, what they're doing is they're tearing apart consciousness and going, well, I've got consciousness aspect 1 and consciousness aspect 2, and they seem to do this, or that, but it's the it's the total, it's the summation of the person minus the ego so much. Although the ego can still astral project with everybody else. But yeah, it's the totality of the individual. It's not one aspect. It's not like the mind goes into the astral and everything else, associated with mind stays behind. It doesn't. It doesn't. And even the physical body is replicated in the astral or replicated in whatever dimension the person is visiting. If you see yourself, well, you see yourself. And if you see yourself, you know who that is. So that's telling you that your consciousness is with you. Your conscious beta psychological self is with you right now. Oh, that's Chrism, or oh, that's Elizabeth, or oh, that's whoever. So I'm wondering at the relevance of this question. I mean, why do they care? Why is it so important to know which aspect of the consciousness is traveling here or there. I mean, it's kind of like going, well, I've got, 17 to 21 trillion cells in my body, and when I take a step, which part of these cells is going first? Are they all facing the same direction, or is one backwards? Is one side? I mean, come on. And I remember answering that question, and I just wrote it. So the consciousness can move between the dimensions. It's not one aspect of consciousness or the other. It's the consciousness. And the physical body is represented as a reflective symbol of the physical self through the dimensions that you may be traveling in, whether it's the etheric or the astral, whatever it may be. Over.
Okay. The next one is, does bad karma of the parents have effect on their children?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. If the karma of the parent is to be murdered, well, you think, I mean, that's going to have an effect on the kids, don't you think? What do you think, Elizabeth?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, the karma of the parent is going to have a direct effect on the child. However, the karma of the child is also going to match the karma of the parent. So it's not like anybody's going into the lifetime with, waiting this surprise that's going to occur. The karma of the parent and the karma of the child are mixed. They're mixed into each other, so that those karmas are going to complement each other, even if it's of a negative value, and even if it's of a positive value too. So yes, the karma of the parent can affect the karma of the child. Over.
Okay. Is it common in awakening that I'm getting back pain sidewise, sometimes below the neck also?
Yes. Over.
Okay. I have what? Okay. The other night, my cat was meowing strangely, so I went to see what he was meowing about, and he was sitting beside a white, large praying mantis in my bedroom floor. It was approximately 2 to 3 inches long. I've never seen one in my area where I live and have no idea how it could have gotten into my bedroom. I scooped it up and released it outside, but I'm wondering if this has anything to do with the Kundalini.
It's a Kundalini creature, and so is the kitty cat. Praying mantises have the, well, let's just put it this way. There are ETs that are like 6 or 7 foot tall praying mantises, and they're very smart. They're very aware. They're very advanced. And our praying mantises here are pretty much along those lines. They have consciousness. They are self-aware. So yeah, the person did well in picking it up and letting it go outside, and the kitty cat did well in not attacking it.
Yeah.
The fact that the kitty cat didn't attack it tells me that it has a lot more to do with Kundalini than not, because the kitty cat will just eat it. Over.
Okay. Here's the next one. Today, while I was meditating and purging some emotional stuff, I was crying uncontrollable, and then I started to speak a language I had never heard of. It sounded like American Indian or a language spoken in the Amazon jungle. It was pretty alarming, but the energy was very strong and expressed itself quite strongly. I had love and sadness in my heart while I was saying these words. It started back again when I was on the computer. I closed my eyes and the energy pushed out these Aztec-like words. Anybody else ever experienced such a thing?
Yeah, this is not uncommon. That can be an entity as well, but it can also be a past life language that the person is speaking. Some language that through their history they are familiar with, and that is actually the best way to receive that. The other way, like glossolalia, like speaking in tongues type of thing. This happens, that's more of a possessive quality, benign possession, but possession nonetheless. Especially, well, I mean, possession. If the people are inviting it in, I can't really call that a possession. That's more of a channeling. But if it's coming on to a person spontaneously, well, then there's karma involved with that. And if that person has a Kundalini awakening equation, then there's certainly karma involved with that, and there's certainly levels of Kundalini connection involved with that. And, you know, so there's various avenues of expression for that to occur within the individual, and they're going to have to feel what is most appropriate to them within the choices that were just given. Over.
Okay. Is Kundalini awakening the same as DNA activation?
No. Over. DNA activation is just using dimethyltryptamine or you know, some other way to initiate a mystical or spiritual response. For some reason I was just drawn to the whole DMT type of thing with that. DNA, it would be an enlightenment of the DNA. So the DNA will change when the Kundalini courses through the system and all 17 to 21 trillion cells receive the gift of grace. That changes the DNA. But it's not all about just DNA activation. The DNA activation is, you know, I think that's kind of a new agey type of term that people like to put, you know, on their profile or something that says, yeah, I am like totally studying spiritual maturation, dude. My DNA is like totally activating. Brow. So yeah. Hang on a second now. Elizabeth. I'm going to go over here to Jeannie. Hello, Jeannie. Are you there, Jeannie? Calling all Jeannies. Calling the genie out of the bottle. The genie in Florida. Okay. No genie.
I'm here.
Oh, are you there, Jeannie in Florida?
I'm here.
Hi, Jeannie. How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Yes.
Well, how can you hear me when I've been doing?
I hear your dog. I hear your dog barking too.
Yeah, the dog is playing by itself. She entertains herself. Oh, but were you hearing me making all those cookies and banging around the kitchen?
No, hon. Did not hear that.
Oh,
but I understand you might have a question.
Oh, actually, let me think. You know, I told Centaura that last time I was speaking with or listening to you, I had a question. I hit 1 as I was instructed, and nothing happened. And so she said this time she would double check. But
what was your question last week, Jeannie?
You know what? I think I spoke with Brooke the next day and got it cleared up, and right now I can't remember it.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I touched base with you today because I saw that the possibility that you had a question. So I didn't want to look over you or overlook you, I should say.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Back
and
to the cookie.
As we go along here, I will press 1 and I will get back on.
Very good, my dear. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. And coming over to Elizabeth, thank you for your patience, my dear. Continue.
Okay. So the next one is, my son has just started his meditation. He often sees different colors of light, but mostly green. Is he in the right way, or is something not good?
I would have to say that he's in the right way. He's doing fine. He's making progress.
Okay. The next one's kind of long, but it's
hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. I'm going to go over to Miss Brooke here for a second. And Is Miss Brooke available?
Miss Brooke is available.
Hey, Miss Brooke, I'd like to. I can hear you perfectly. Could not hear you at all last time.
I know.
Okay, I want to ask you one of the questions, because I know you've gone through this lately. How can you tell the difference between Shakti and Shiva, which you had a recent experience with, and entities? What's the difference in your equation?
Gosh, I think Shakti and Shiva is going to propel you closer and forward to clarity, while entity is going to propel you to anxiety, fear, complete confusion, sitting on the fence, not sure what you're going to do. You know, it just wants you either in total fear or in total doubt or uncertainty. But when you receive from Shakti Shiva, it's absolute, it's clear as a bell, it rings true with every fiber of your being. You just know it is accurate. I mean, experience I had just recently, and yeah, it was beautiful.
And what led you to that
bliss.
experience? Go ahead.
Well, what led me was, similar to what you were talking about earlier. You were instructing Vincent and the repetition that's required of these. You have to do this over and over and over. You have to be consistent. And I had an experience where, everything in my body and my mind and my emotional body was telling me to go the other direction, run. But, my instructions given were telling me to stay, do this thing over and over and over, refute what I hear by an entity, refute, do a reversal. When I had that experience, I did it over and over and over and consistently, and it sort of like put me in like a chamber or a box, you could say, that propelled me forward or higher in a protective way. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like I lifted. I lifted out of that level of confusion into a level of total clarity and total bliss, total love, understanding. I had little mini downloads occur.
What's a download? Tell people what a download is.
It can be either an instruction given from Shakti Shiva. It can be a writing. It can be clarity on something. It comes in many different ways. Sometimes pictures, forms. Sometimes I'll get words. So I guess what I'm talking about is the more I stayed true with doing my reversals and just refusing everything that the entities were trying to tell me, the more clarity and protection, love, understanding, and absoluteness I had in my understanding. So it was like validating for to keep going and to continue, because I got to tell you, this can be confusing. We have training. I'm 43 years old. We have training of all these years to do one thing. We're trained by these entities. We're trained by the ego. We're trained by society and culture to stay at a certain level of consciousness. And when you begin to rise above that, you're going to be pulled down. There's going to be some serious resistance, and you have to keep going. When you do, it's almost like Shakti and Shiva will push you and just grab you and tell you, yes, this is it. Keep going. Keep going. There'll be more tests, and it'll be challenging, but keep going. It was beautiful. Beautiful the other night for me.
That is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that, Brooke.
You're welcome, Chrism.
And people, if you're interested in reading some of Brooke's work, go to Kundalini Priestess on the Facebook. She's got a page there called Kundalini Priestess, and there's some pretty good Kundalini writings there as well by Brooke Robertson. So, putting you in the blue, my dear. And coming up to Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Okay, continue, please.
Okay. I was meditating and asked my K to help me heal my face inflammation. I felt it in that area. I must have fallen asleep. In my dream, we were jumping across trees and happy to do so. Some people were trying to stop us and cutting some of the trees down. I ended up finding my brother, and we went home through the stray wooded area and back of my parents' garden into theirs that way. Unlocked the door for my brother, then went back out again to see if it followed us. It was pitch black, but I knew exactly where I was. Saw some people coming, so I ran back, noticing there was a metal gate and fence hidden by the tree. It was open. I ran through and continued to the garden. As I ran in past what appeared to be a young doe, I slowed so not to scare her, even though dark, the garden was bright, like everything had a glow to it. At the base of the big tree was a stag lying down on its side, ankle impaled on a branch. I got down next to him and stroked him, communicating I was going to try and help him. He turned and looked straight at me. We had a moment, and I stroked his forehead and nose. I moved around and looked. The branch was split. I tried to ease his leg up, but it wouldn't move. As doing this, he stood up, but his foot went on my bent leg, so we were both in pain together. I couldn't slide it out sideways. Helped lower him down again and said, gonna have to cut the branch off before trying to remove it. Woke up then with pain in the exact same spot, tender for about 10 minutes. Any ideas on the dream meaning?
Shakti and Shiva took the positions of the doe and the stag. And the individual was being tested on their willingness to give help and assistance. And they passed that test glowingly, I think. Over.
Nice. Okay. What is the measurement of enlightenment, Master Chris?
Enlightenment, there is no measurement for enlightenment. But what people can begin to use is levels of enlightenment come to an individual and it begins to affect a person's behavior. So you can look at the person's behavior and the wisdom that they either give or don't give as markers towards levels of enlightenment. If a person, has a Kundalini awakening and they're still going through the traumas and the dramas of the different levels of the activated equation, not quite into the enlightenment format yet. But after the awakening and as they move in and they start receiving downloads, like Brooke Robertson mentioned, receiving downloads, that's an indication of the beginning of the enlightenment process to occur. When you can close your eyes and you can, in a dark room, and you see behind your eyelids, everything is lit up, that's also an indication of enlightenment. Do we have an enlightenmentometer? We don't. We don't have any kind of a machine that will measure levels of enlightenment, that at least that the government is exposing to the public anyway. But typical enlightenment is going to defy levels of measurement. It's more of an expressive quality. It is something that, let me give you an example. Some of the really, really advanced souls that people would say, oh boy, that person's really enlightened. They act very childish. They're like children. They're like innocent little kids. They laugh at silly little things. And it's almost like you begin to mature backwards. But you're inside of this amazing level of grace, and this innocence comes forward in the expression, the innocence and the childishness and the, and it's not childish in an evil 13-year-old way. It's childishness in a like maybe a very, very curious and loving 4 or 5-year-old way. Okay, it's that quality of positive expression or just kind of laughing, tickly type of expression. And then on top of that, what levels of wisdom are coming from these individuals? Some people, that are deep into the Kundalini will have very, very few levels of wisdom, but you'll see that their life is gravitating in a wisdom sort of way. Other people will be given actual wisdoms that they write down and they make available to other people. And Sri Aurobindo did this, and Yogananda did this, and Vivekananda and Ramakrishna. And so these people were able to codify in a way their wisdoms on paper within the language of the culture they're in. And within that understanding, they were able to give levels of wisdom that one can really tell has a kind of an off-planet source or out of the mundane source that a person can participate with. And so enlightenment is not something that you can measure with a ruler, but you can measure it through its expression from the individual. Over.
Okay, this is the last question. This person wants you to interpret a waking vision. I was lying in bed about to fall asleep when I saw a very large orange eye in front of my face. It then moved away a bit until it was a very large black panther head with orange eyes looking at me about an inch from my face. Could you please comment on this vision? Thank you.
Yeah, Shakti Kundalini coming to you with an expression of the second chakra, the creative force, the home of the chi energy within the individual. So yeah, the black panther, black being the color of the Shakti and orange being the color of the second chakra. So basically the Shakti would be counseling that person to have a look at their second chakra. Look at the second chakra, and this kind of ties into our show tonight. Look at the sexual expression. Look at the levels of creativity. Look at power modulation. Look at the filtration of specific minerals out of their life or their body or their system. Maybe taking out levels of chlorine or kind of like dirty tap water type of stuff. Looking at that right now. So she's looking at them with an orange eye because she wants them to look at their second chakra. She's coming as a panther to inform them that this is indeed the Shakti Kundalini. Over.
That was the last question.
Okay. Does Loranya have anything she would like to say today?
No, I just when you were speaking earlier about the entities and doing the reverse and, just a lot of just agreement with everything that you were saying about a lot of that and me as well, just in my experience throughout my life from childhood till now. It just all rings very true and like you and Brooke both said, just repetition, doing the opposite, continuing to do that, not giving up on that. Yeah, all good.
Oh, nice. And thank you for asking the questions today, Elizabeth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And put you in the blue, and I'll come down to Miss Brooke here. And Brooke, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you have anything that you would like to add before the show is over?
No, I don't think so. But thank you. It's been lovely.
You're very welcome. And last chance for anybody, the 13 people in the chat room, to ask a question. If you have any questions there, please do it now. And I'm going to go ahead and make a few announcements. Now, we do have once again, we have the seminar in Berlin, Germany coming up. That will be the 3rd and 4th of September. That's a weekend. The seminar will start at 9 o'clock and end at 5, but I always like to go over. Please contact Manish or me, and you can contact me at kfireforall @yahoo.com. That's KFIREFORALL @yahoo.com. And join us there in Germany. This will be the first continental Kundalini Awakening Systems 1 seminar on the continent of Europe, and so I just want to invite as many people to come. Atlanta Seeker is saying, sorry to non-U.S. listeners who may not care. Would you mind sharing some examples of evidence of darkness, evil, entity possession, and also good and positive you think you have seen in the political candidates? Oh, yeah, that's easy enough. I mean, let's look at Brezhnev in Russia. You know, Brezhnev that killed, he killed like 7 million of his own people just because they were there, because he wanted them off the land. That would be of a very, very dark entity that is possessing that man. Same with Hitler. Hitler had very, very, very dark entities attached to him, and calling others with very similar darkness consciousness attached to them, like Goebbels and Himmler, and these types of his upper staff members that would just do the worst things to people. Joseph Mengele, the doctor there that was doing human experimentation on many different people. I mean, these are evidence of darkness and evil entity possessions within the political candidate. Now, within say, current United States politics, of course, Hillary Clinton is about as festooned with dark entities as you can get. But she still is pulling for, say, a more positive agenda, but I'm not sure how real that is. I don't know if that's just saying something to get into the office. Bernie Sanders had a lot fewer of the darker entities, and he had more positive entities, more angelic structures that was guiding him, and really they were there to plant seeds. They were there to plant seeds in the population, and this occurred. And so that was a very positive example of positive entity possession within the current political climate here in the United States. Hillary and Bill, they belong to a cadre of people that are, kind of like winning at all costs and saying whatever you need to say, whether it's a lie or the truth, but saying whatever you need to say in order to get whatever it is you want to get done. So they don't care if they lie, they don't care if they cheat, they don't care if they steal, they don't care if they murder people. As long as they get their agenda, then they're willing to do whatever they want to do in order to get that agenda. Donald Trump, well, geez Louise. It's hard to find a place to begin with Donald Trump because he's such a narcissist. And entities can feed narcissism, and so I'll just have to stop right there since we only got 90 seconds left in the show. I would like to thank everybody who called in. I'd especially like to thank Elizabeth, Brooke, and Jeannie, and of course Santara. And I'd like to thank Manisha for coming online, and Emma, and Atlanta Seeker, and the guests, and Manisha, Mary Jean, Phil Faruba, Vincent, and Cole. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this program, and I'll go ahead and end it the way I started it. Thank you, everyone.